R&B group guy, you won't believe what happened to them. What if I told you one of the greatest R&B groups of all time didn't fall apart because of fading fame, but because of a twisted mix of betrayal, exploitation, and secrets buried for decades? The rise and collapse of Guy is far darker, far stranger, and far more unbelievable than anyone imagined. From stolen profits to explosive feuds to a vanished superstar, this story has everything. And today, we're pulling back the curtain. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to Legends of Black Excellence because the truth behind our icons deserves to be told. Rise and fall of Guy. When the story of R&B group Guy begins, it feels like the opening scene of a triumph. The kind of moment music lovers still remember from the late 1980s when a new sound could sweep across America overnight. At the heart of it stood a young musical genius, Teddy Riley, barely in his 20s but already reshaping the future of black music. His signature new jack swing style, those tight drums, crisp synth lines, and bold rhythmic grooves, gave listeners something they had never heard before. America embraced this revolutionary sound instantly, but what the world didn't see was the darkness gathering behind the spotlight. Even as Guy prepared to rise to megastar status, the seeds of their downfall had already been planted. The video's introduction doesn't soften the truth. It boldly promises a story of brilliance overshadowed by betrayal, and a fall so shocking that even longtime fans never saw it coming. Behind the group's polished performances and high-energy hits, powerful forces were quietly shaping their fate. Teddy Riley, with his extraordinary talent, became the centerpiece of Guy's musical identity, the architect of a sound that would dominate radio dance floors and urban culture. Yet as the cameras captured his success, hidden battles raged out of sight. Contracts were being signed that the young artists barely understood. Decisions were made that didn't reflect the group's best interests. And somewhere in the shadows stood Gene Griffin, a figure whose influence loomed large even before Guy reached their peak. Though not yet exposed in the opening scenes, Griffin's presence is felt a reminder that the business side of music can be far crueler than audiences ever imagine. The video's introduction uses this tension masterfully. It hints at internal conflicts slowly simmering among the members, particularly around money control and trust. While Aaron Hall would eventually become one of the most recognizable voices of the era, the early narrative positions him in the background, visible in talent, but nearly invisible in the business dealings that threatened the group's stability. Viewers are led to understand that the public image of Guy stylish, confident, unstoppable was only half the story. The other half was happening in boardrooms and back offices, where signatures carried more weight than voices, and where young artists often found themselves outmatched long before they realized it. As the introduction closes, the tone shifts from admiration to foreboding. Guy is portrayed not just as a groundbreaking R&B act, but as a cautionary tale proof that even the most brilliant rise can be undone by the forces working behind the scenes. The story invites viewers deeper, promising revelations of exploitation, manipulation, and heartbreak tied directly to the group's earliest days. And at the center of it all stands Teddy Riley, a prodigy whose gift changed music forever, yet whose journey would be marked by battles no chart-topping success could prevent. Origins in Harlem and New Jack Swing. Long before Guy became a household name, the roots of their story were already taking shape in the streets of Harlem, where young musicians carried dreams bigger than the neighborhoods that raised them. At the center of this creative storm was Teddy Riley, a prodigy whose reputation was spreading quietly but powerfully through New York's music scene. Producers twice his age marveled at his instinct for blending rhythm and melody in ways that felt both gritty and sophisticated. Even as a teenager, Teddy was producing tracks that caught the attention of hip-hop pioneers. But destiny works in patterns, and his future wasn't meant to be shaped alone. It was during this chapter that Teddy reconnected with an old friend, Timmy Gatling, someone who had already shared a stage, a dream, and a youthful vision with him in their earlier group, Kids at Work. Kids at Work never reached mainstream success, but something far more important was born there. a creative partnership that would eventually change R&B forever. Timmy, sharp-eared and always scanning the room for talent, carried the same hunger for something new, something bigger than what the industry was offering black artists at the time. This hunger led him to a moment that now feels almost mythical. While working a regular shift in the stockroom of a Brooklyn department store, Timmy heard a voice rising from the back, raw, emotional, drenched in gospel soul. It was Aaron Hall singing to himself as he sorted boxes, unaware that fate was listening. Timmy knew instantly that this was no ordinary voice. He introduced Aaron to Teddy Riley, and what happened next would become the foundation of the new Jack Swing movement. Teddy brought the sharp, futuristic edges, the electronic drums, the street energy, the hip-hop swagger. Aaron brought the fire of the church, the powerful wails, the emotional runs, the confessional delivery. Together they created a sound so fresh that even today listeners can pinpoint the exact moment when R&B shifted. And standing beside them was Timmy, helping shape the early vision with the same confidence he'd held since their kids at work days. But every great sound needs a name, and every great group needs direction. As the trio began crafting music in Teddy's Harlem basement, Gene Griffin, formerly the manager of Kids at Work, stepped back into the picture. Seeing their potential immediately, he pushed them to refine their identity. After throwing around ideas, they settled on a word that was simple, bold, and unforgettable: Guy. It felt modern, masculine, and direct, exactly the kind of name that could carry a revolution. And in that moment, the blueprint of one of R&B's most influential groups was officially born. Exploitive Contract and Timmy's exit. As Guy's sound began to take shape, the music industry took notice, especially Gene Griffin, a manager whose influence loomed large over Teddy Riley's early career. Griffin understood immediately that this new fusion of street-level beats and church-born vocals could be the next major movement in R&B. Seizing the moment, he guided the young trio, Teddy Riley, Timmy Gatling, and Aaron Hall, toward a deal with Uptown Records, the rising powerhouse founded by Andre Harrell. Uptown had just begun defining what modern urban music would look and sound like, and Guy seemed destined to be one of its flagship acts. But beneath the excitement, a more troubling story was already being written, one hidden deep inside the paperwork that the group, overwhelmed by opportunity, barely understood. The contract Gene Griffin secured for Guy seemed standard at first glance, but its true nature was far from ordinary. Buried within its clauses was a sweeping transfer of publishing rights and income directly into Griffin's control. For young artists eager to escape the streets and make their mark, the promise of recording for a major label overshadowed the fine print. Teddy Riley focused on the music. Aaron Hall focused on the vocals. And while the group celebrated their new beginning, the contract quietly ensured that the wealth generated by their talent would flow not into their pockets, but into their managers. It was a setup all too common in the industry, yet uniquely devastating for a group about to reshape the future of R&B. But one person in the group took the time to look closer. Timmy Gatling, thoughtful and cautious by nature, scrutinized the terms and immediately sensed something was wrong. When he questioned the agreement, he found little support from those around him. And when he refused to sign, Griffin made his decision quickly and decisively. Timmy was removed from the group. What made the situation even more shocking was that Timmy had already recorded much of the debut album. His voice, his work, his image remained etched into the project, but his place in the group vanished almost overnight. For fans, his face would appear on the album cover, but behind the scenes, he was gone. With the clock ticking and the label demanding a completed lineup, Aaron Hall stepped forward with a solution: his younger brother, Damian Hall, a charismatic vocalist with church roots and natural talent. Damian stepped into the group just as their journey was about to explode into superstardom. Yet the cost of that transition, the removal of a founding member, the tightening grip of Gene Griffin, and the unequal contract locked in under Uptown Records set the stage for the turmoil that would later define the group's heartbreaking downfall. Breakthrough debut album. When Guy released their debut album in 1988, the impact was nothing short of explosive. The moment the opening beat of Groove Me hit radios across the country, it was clear that something new had arrived. Something bold, youthful, and irresistibly rhythmic. At the heart of this breakthrough stood Teddy Riley, the young producer whose innovative approach blended hip-hop grit with R&B smoothness in a way American audiences had never heard before. His fingerprints were on every track, from the sharp swing of the drums to the futuristic synth lines that seemed to leap out of the speakers. The album wasn't just a collection of songs, it was a declaration that a new sound, new jack swing was here, and it was about to redefine black music for a generation. Alongside Teddy's production genius was the unmistakable voice of Aaron Hall, whose fiery gospel-infused delivery gave the music its emotional center. His vocals on hits like I Like burned with passion and urgency, lifting the track to become the group's breakout crossover success. Complementing him was his brother Damian Hall, who brought youthful energy and smooth harmonies to the trio's dynamic. Though still new to the group, Damian stepped confidently into the role, helping complete Guy's on-stage chemistry with a fresh, polished presence. And even though he was no longer part of the lineup, Timmy Gatling's face remained on the album cover, a quiet reminder of the group's complicated beginnings and the rapid changes that had taken place behind the scenes. Commercially, the success of the album was staggering. Guy's debut soared to the #1 spot on the Billboard R&B Albums chart, ultimately selling over 2 million copies, an extraordinary achievement for a new group entering a competitive and rapidly evolving music landscape. Tracks like Teddy's Jam showcased Riley's signature production style, while the smooth grooves and high-energy rhythms made the album a staple in clubs, roller rinks, and house parties across America. At a time when R&B was searching for its next evolution after the Quiet Storm era, Guy delivered exactly what listeners craved: sound, swagger, and undeniable freshness. But perhaps the greatest legacy of the album was its role in igniting a nationwide movement. Practically overnight, New Jack Swing became the sound of late 80s urban America. Producers, DJs, and artists all scrambled to capture the same punchy drum patterns and slick vocal arrangements that Teddy Riley had perfected. Guy didn't simply release a successful record, they set the blueprint for the next wave of R&B influencing artists from Heavy D to Bobby Brown. For many fans, especially those who lived through the era, hearing that album for the first time felt like experiencing lightning in a bottle. Little did the world know that behind this meteoric rise lay tensions that would later shake the group to its core. The future feud with Gene and Basic Black. By 1989, Guy was no longer just a rising R&B act, they were becoming a cultural force. Their momentum carried them into one of the most important films of the era, Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing. When their song, My Fantasy, appeared on the soundtrack, it linked the group to a powerful moment in black cinema. Spike Lee's film was bold, political, and unforgettable, much like the energy Guy brought to the R&B world. The placement wasn't merely promotional, it was symbolic. Guy was now part of a movement bigger than the charts. Their sound was becoming the heartbeat of urban America, and expectations for their next album were sky high. What fans didn't know was that beneath the surface, the same innovative fire driving the music was being met with rising tension, distrust, and a storm that would soon explode publicly. In 1990, Guy released their second album, The Future, and it was everything fans hoped for: slicker production, deeper grooves, and a maturity that showed how much the trio had grown. Tracks like Let's Chill and Wanna Get With You dominated the R&B charts, pushing the album to platinum status. But hidden within the glossy surface were two tracks, Total Control and Got to Be a Leader, that carried a sharper edge. These songs were thinly veiled messages aimed at their former manager, Gene Griffin, expressing the anger and betrayal the group felt over the contract that had once bound them. Teddy Riley's production made the songs catchy, but the lyrics cut deep. Through music, Guy revealed what had been simmering behind the scenes: a battle for independence, identity, and justice. Gene Griffin, however, wasn't about to fade quietly into the background. Feeling challenged and perhaps threatened, he formed a new R&B act called Basic Black, built around talented newcomers, Walter Mucho Scott and Daryl Diesel Adams. Griffin positioned them as a direct rival to Guy, aiming to recreate the magic he once controlled. It was a bold, almost confrontational move. Basic Black's style, choreography, and sound all echoed the formula Griffin had overseen with Guy. Industry insiders noticed, fans noticed, and Guy certainly noticed. For Teddy Riley, Aaron Hall, and Damian Hall, it felt like watching someone try to clone their identity while capitalizing on their hard-earned success. Publicly, the rivalry fueled headlines. Internally, it strained the members even further. Teddy Riley pushed production boundaries to protect Guy's originality. Aaron Hall poured raw emotion into his vocals, channeling frustration into powerful performances. Damian Hall added strength to the group's unity on stage, even as pressure mounted behind closed doors. The future should have been a moment of triumph, and in many ways it was, but the looming war with Gene Griffin and the emergence of Basic Black cast a long, complicated shadow. Guy had proven they were innovators, but the fight to maintain ownership of their legacy had only just begun. Breakup at their peak. By 1991, Guy stood at the peak of their Power Platinum Records sold-out shows and a sound that had reshaped R&B. To the outside world, they were unstoppable. Fans saw the swagger, the harmonies, the electrifying stage presence that had taken New Jack Swing from a local New York sound to a national phenomenon. But behind the roaring applause, the group was suffering under immense pressure. The grueling tour schedule, constant media attention, and unresolved financial wounds from their early contract had begun chipping away at their unity. What the public celebrated as a golden era, the members were experiencing as a tightening vice. By the time whispers of internal conflict began leaking to the industry, the reality was already clear. Guy was beginning to break apart at the height of their brilliance. The strain was felt by everyone, but it weighed heaviest on Aaron Hall, the group's powerful and emotionally charged lead vocalist. Known for his commanding presence and gospel-born intensity, Aaron was privately grappling with something that went far beyond business stress. The death of his mother, a deeply painful loss, sent him into a period of grief that made the demands of fame nearly impossible to bear. Touring while mourning, performing while heartbroken, and carrying the expectations of a group at its peak left him emotionally exhausted. Every artist has a breaking point, and for Aaron, the combination of personal tragedy and professional pressure became overwhelming. His voice remained strong, but inside he was struggling in ways the audience never saw. For Teddy Riley, the group's visionary producer, the pressure took a different form. As the architect of New Jack Swing, he carried the weight of innovation on his shoulders. The industry wanted more hits, more albums, more groundbreaking work. Teddy was composing, producing, arranging, and performing, all while navigating conflicts that had grown more complicated than musical notes. Meanwhile, Damian Hall, the newest member of the trio, found himself trying to hold steady within a storm he hadn't helped create. His role had expanded, but so had the tension around him. The contract disputes with Gene Griffin, the non-stop work schedule, and the emotional strain within the group made it increasingly difficult for the brothers and Teddy to stay aligned. The official breakup in 1991 shocked fans, but for the members it felt inevitable. Guy didn't fall apart because of fading success. They broke up while standing at the very top, a rare and heartbreaking reality in the world of music. Each member stepped into a different path. Teddy Riley launched into a historic production career that would shape the sound of the 1990s. Aaron Hall began pursuing a solo identity shaped by both talent and pain, and Damian Hall continued building his craft independently. The end of Guy wasn't just the end of a group. It was the first major turning point in a story that would become far more dramatic than anyone ever imagined. Solo careers after Guy. When Guy dissolved in 1991, the shock rippled through the R&B world. Fans wondered what would become of the young men who had reshaped the sound of an entire generation. What happened next was not a quiet fade into obscurity, but three separate journeys, each marked by ambition, pressure, and the echoes of the groundbreaking legacy they carried with them. For Teddy Riley, the group's musical architect, the breakup became a turning point, not an ending. And for Aaron Hall and Damian Hall, it opened the door to defining themselves outside the shadow of one of R&B's most important groups. The story of their solo careers would become a complex blend of triumph and turbulence, success and struggle, all unfolding in the bright light of the 1990s music landscape. No one in the industry was surprised when Teddy Riley soared immediately after Guy's split. His musical fingerprint had shaped New Jack Swing, and now the world wanted more. Teddy formed Blackstreet, a group that would become one of the defining acts of 90s R&B, eventually giving the world iconic hits like Before I Let You Go and the Grammy-winning No Diggity. But that wasn't all. Teddy also stepped into legendary territory when he co-produced Michael Jackson's 1991 album, Dangerous, contributing to hits such as Remember the Time and In the Closet. Working alongside the King of Pop solidified Teddy's place as one of the most influential producers of his era. At the same time, he produced for Bobby Brown, Heavy D. SWV, and countless others, turning his post-Guy career into a masterclass in innovation and longevity. While Teddy dominated behind the boards, Aaron Hall stepped into the spotlight as a solo artist, a natural move for a man whose voice had already become one of the most recognizable in R&B. His 1992 single Don't Be Afraid featured on the Juice soundtrack shot to the top of the R&B charts, becoming one of the biggest records of his career. A year later, his debut album, The Truth, delivered another timeless hit, I Miss You, a heartbreaking ballad that climbed to number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100 and showcased the emotional depth of his vocal talent. Aaron's solo work proved that he didn't need the group to command attention. His voice alone could captivate a nation. Yet behind the scenes, the pressures of fame and personal grief continued to shadow his story. Meanwhile, Damian Hall, the youngest of the trio, also ventured into a solo path. In 1994, he released his album Straight to the Point, a project that highlighted his smooth tone and carefully crafted songwriting. Though the album didn't achieve the commercial success of Teddy's or Aaron's post-Guy work, it demonstrated Damian's artistic identity and determination to carve out his own space in R&B. His career didn't soar to the same heights, but his contribution remained meaningful. A reminder that even the quieter stories carry weight in the larger tapestry of the group's legacy. Together, their solo journeys painted a vivid portrait of what happens when a groundbreaking group falls apart. The music lives on, but each member must confront the world and themselves in a new and uncharted way. Aaron Hall's turmoil and legal troubles. The next chapter in Aaron Hall's life is one of the most heartbreaking and complicated parts of the Guy story. After the group's breakup, fans still saw Aaron as the powerhouse voice of New Jack Swing, the man whose gospel-infused intensity gave Guy its emotional fire. But privately, he was struggling under the weight of a devastating personal loss. In 1994, Aaron's newborn son passed away shortly after birth, a tragedy that left deep emotional wounds. For a man whose voice often revealed more truth than his words, this loss shook him profoundly. Friends and fans would later describe this period as the moment when grief began to overshadow his career, leaving him vulnerable, withdrawn, and battling pain that no chart-topping success could erase. During this turbulent time, Aaron entered a relationship with Gloria, a young model and dancer who had begun appearing in hip-hop videos. According to public interviews given by Gloria in later years, she was 16 years old when the relationship began, and she later gave birth to their son, Aaron Hall IV, at 17. Gloria has long claimed that Aaron was absent from his son's life, referring to him publicly as a deadbeat dad, and alleging emotional and physical mistreatment during their relationship. Aaron has denied these accusations in multiple interviews, saying he attempted to support his son, but felt blocked at various points. The truth behind their story remains deeply contested, but what is certain is that the public tension between them added fuel to the growing perception that Aaron's personal life was spiraling beyond his control. The mid-1990s brought even more turmoil. In 1996, court records show that Aaron pleaded guilty to assault involving a former girlfriend whose name was not disclosed publicly. As part of his sentence, he received 5 years of probation with a requirement to complete anger management counseling. For an artist known for his passionate, soul-bearing performances, the legal consequences marked a painful contrast between the man audiences admired and the man battling his own unresolved trauma. These events also cast a long shadow over his music career, affecting public perception and limiting opportunities that might have propelled his solo success even further. The legal troubles did not end there. When Aaron failed to attend mandatory anger management sessions required by the court, a warrant was issued, and he later served 11 months at Rikers Island. This period became another dark chapter in a life already marked by grief, controversy, and complicated relationships. For fans who had once viewed Aaron Hall as one of the most powerful voices in R&B, his personal challenges created a heartbreaking contrast, an artist with extraordinary talent struggling to hold on to stability while navigating a storm of loss allegations and legal consequences. His story, raw and deeply human, reminds us that even the brightest voices can carry shadows the world never fully sees. Failed reunions and broken trust. As the mid-1990s arrived, the possibility of a Guy reunion carried a kind of electricity for fans who had never stopped longing for the group's unmistakable chemistry. In 1995, hope finally flickered again when Teddy Riley, Aaron Hall, and Damian Hall stepped back into the studio and released a new single, Tell Me What You Like. For a moment, it felt as though the magic of the late 80s had returned. Radio stations began spinning, the track fans cheered for a full comeback, and whispers spread that a new album might be on the horizon. But behind the scenes, the old wounds, financial disputes, creative disagreements, and lingering mistrust were already reopening. Soon it became clear that the reunion was fragile. The album the fans expected never arrived. The single stood alone, a brief flash of what once was, overshadowed by conflicts that still hadn't healed. By 1999, the trio made another attempt, this time with a full-length project. Guy III was released as their first album in nearly a decade, offering a modernized take on the new jack swing sound they pioneered. The record delivered the modest hit Dancin' and reminded listeners of Teddy's unmistakable production touch and Aaron's magnetic vocals. But commercially, the album didn't soar. It managed to attract loyal fans, but couldn't break into the mainstream the way their first two records had. The music landscape had changed, R&B had evolved, and the turbulence within the group made it difficult to sustain momentum. Once again, the reunion faded, not in a burst of drama, but in a quiet, disappointing fizzle that left more questions than answers. Then came a moment that reignited national excitement. In 2009, Guy reunited at the BET Awards, delivering a show-stopping performance of I Like during a New Jack Swing tribute. The crowd erupted, celebrities stood in awe, and social media platforms buzzed with nostalgia, seeing Teddy Riley, Aaron Hall, and Damian Hall sharing the stage again felt like a miracle. In 2010, the group followed the momentum with more performances, and fans truly believed that Guy was back for good. But beneath the applause, familiar tensions resurfaced. Disputes over money and royalty distribution began tearing apart the fragile reunion, exposing the same fractures that had ended the group decades earlier. By 2011, the split had grown undeniable. When Aaron and Damian appeared at the BET Honors performing as Guy, something was unmistakably missing: Teddy Riley. Without the man who created the group's signature sound, the performance felt incomplete, almost symbolic. Fans reacted immediately. Many said, "That's not Guy without Teddy." The absence underscored a painful truth. Every attempt to bring back the group's original magic collapsed under the weight of old battles. What should have been a triumphant return became another chapter in a long pattern of reunions that rose with promise and fell apart just as quickly. In the end, the legacy of Guy's failed reunions became as dramatic and as heartbreaking as their rise to fame. Sexual assault. Lawsuit against Aaron and Diddy. By late 2023, the name Aaron Hall, once celebrated as one of the most electrifying voices of the new jack swing era, returned to national headlines, but not for his music. Instead, it surfaced in connection with a wave of lawsuits, filed during the final days of New York's Adult Survivors Act, a temporary law allowing individuals to bring civil claims for sexual misconduct that occurred years earlier. Among those lawsuits was one filed by an unnamed woman who alleged that she and her friend were assaulted by both Aaron Hall and Sean Diddy Combs in the early 1990s. For fans who had followed Guy since their meteoric rise in the late 80s, this new development was shocking. The past that Aaron had tried to outrun, filled with personal struggles, legal troubles, and emotional turmoil, was suddenly thrust back into the spotlight in the most public and painful way imaginable. The lawsuit described a disturbing series of events allegedly taking place after a gathering linked to Uptown Records, connecting the allegations not just to the artists, but to a broader era in the music industry. While the details remain allegations, not proven facts, the filing immediately became part of a broader storm surrounding Diddy, who faced multiple lawsuits from different women that same year. In each case, the claims painted a dark picture of the entertainment world during the early 1990s, a time remembered by many for creativity and innovation, but also for excess power imbalances and unchecked behavior behind closed doors. As the media covered these stories extensively, Aaron Hall's name, once associated with hits like I Miss You and Don't Be Afraid, was now written beside headlines no artist ever wants to see. The public reaction was swift and intense. For Sean Diddy Combs, who had been a towering figure in hip-hop for decades, the lawsuit added to a growing list of accusations that challenged his legacy and placed him under a level of scrutiny unlike anything he had faced before. But for Aaron Hall, the impact was even more severe. While Diddy maintained a massive fan base and powerful industry connections, Aaron's career had been quieter for many years. The resurfacing of allegations, even as civil claims, hit him with full force. Comment sections, music blogs, and social media lit up with conversations about the past, the culture of the industry at that time, and the once beloved singer now entangled in a legal and moral firestorm. As the lawsuit moved forward, the damage to Aaron Hall's reputation was undeniable. For an artist whose entire career was built on emotional honesty and vocal intensity, the renewed scrutiny added another painful chapter to an already turbulent life. The allegations did more than spark controversy. They reshaped the way many viewed the legacy of a man whose voice had once defined an era. And for longtime fans, the situation was heartbreaking. The story of Guy, already filled with loss and conflict, now carried yet another layer of tragedy tied to a past that refused to stay buried. Aaron Hall vanishes from the spotlight. By early 2025, the story of Aaron Hall, once one of the most commanding voices in R&B, took a turn that even longtime fans could hardly believe. After decades of musical triumphs, personal struggles, and public controversies, Aaron suddenly re-entered national headlines, not because of a new song reunion or interview, but because he had become impossible to locate. Court filings connected to a 2023 civil lawsuit stated that attorneys attempting to serve Aaron with legal paperwork had been unable to find him for months. Multiple attempts at contact through known addresses, previous locations, and past associates had reportedly led nowhere. For a man who once commanded the stage with raw gospel fire and magnetic presence, the idea that he had seemingly vanished was almost surreal. As the search dragged on, the legal team involved in the case took an unusual but legally recognized step. They filed a request seeking permission to serve Aaron Hall through public notice, a procedure typically used only when a defendant cannot be found through conventional methods. This meant that instead of delivering documents directly, lawyers could publish official notices in approved newspapers, often in the regions where the individual is believed to live or last resided. Reports indicated that notices were requested for publication in states such as Georgia and California, two places where Aaron had spent significant time in the past. The request underscored the seriousness of the search. This wasn't a minor matter. It was a formal acknowledgement that traditional efforts to locate him had been exhausted. Naturally, with legal filings becoming public, speculation began to grow. Some believed Aaron might be deliberately avoiding legal proceedings, a conclusion drawn from the timing and his past struggles with compliance in earlier court-ordered matters. Others offered a different perspective, suggesting he may have chosen to live privately or relocate quietly, especially after years of public scrutiny and painful personal experiences. In the age of social media and constant visibility, the idea of someone stepping away from public life entirely is increasingly rare, but not impossible. And for a performer who had long battled emotional strain, legal pressure, and the weight of his own history retreating from the spotlight may not have been unthinkable. Still, the absence of clarity left fans unsettled. Aaron Hall was once a figure of immense talent, a man whose voice shaped a generation of R&B. To see him not only embroiled in legal controversy, but now seemingly unreachable stirred a mixture of concern, sadness, and disbelief. His disappearance from public view became yet another layer in the already dramatic legacy of Guy. The group's story, once defined by innovation and youthful fire, now echoed with uncertainty. In 2025, the question lingered in the minds of fans and observers alike. Where is Aaron Hall, and what does the future hold for a man whose voice once shook the walls of R&B history? As we look at Aaron Hall's disappearance and the unresolved questions surrounding Guy's turbulent legacy, one truth becomes impossible to ignore. Greatness often comes with shadows the world never fully sees. Their rise shaped a generation, yet their fall still sparks debate decades later. Was Aaron Hall escaping pressure, hiding from the past, or simply seeking peace beyond the spotlight? No one can say for sure, but the silence speaks loudly. And here on Legends of Black Excellence, we continue asking the questions others won't. Tell me, how do you think this story really ends?